Our daily Bible reading for February 6th. Our reading today comes from the Gospel of Matthew chapter 21. Matthew chapter 21 will begin reading in verse 1 through verse 27. Now when they drew near to Jerusalem and came to Bethphage, to the Mount of Olives, then Jesus sent 2 disciples, saying to them, Go into the village in front of you, and immediately you will find a donkey tied and a colt with her. Untie them and bring them to me. If anyone says anything to you, you shall say, The Lord needs them, and he will send them at once. This took place to fulfill what was spoken by the prophet, saying, Say to the daughter of Zion, Behold, your king is coming to you, humble and mounted on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a beast of burden. The disciples went and did as Jesus had directed them. They brought the donkey and the colt and put on them their cloaks, and he sat on them. Most of the crowd spread their cloaks on the road, and others cut branches from the trees and spread them on the road. And the crowds that went before him and that followed him were shouting, Hosanna to the Son of David! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord! Hosanna in the highest! When he entered Jerusalem, the whole city was stirred up, saying, Who is this? And the crowd said, This is the prophet Jesus from Nazareth of Galilee. And Jesus entered the temple and drove out all who sold and bought in the temple. And he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold pigeons. He said to them, It is written, My house shall be called a house of prayer, but you make it a den of robbers. And the blind and the lame came to him in the temple, and he healed them. But when the chief priests and the scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying out in the temple, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant. And they said to him, Do you hear what these are saying? And Jesus said to them, Yes, have you never read? Out of the mouth of infants and nursing babes, you have prepared praise. And leaving them, he went out of the city to Bethany and lodged there. In the morning, as he was returning to the city, he became hungry. And seeing a fig tree by the wayside, he went to it and found nothing on it, but only leaves. And he said to it, May no fruit ever come from you again. And the fig tree withered at once. When the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, How did the fig tree wither at once? And Jesus answered them, Truly, I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, Be taken up and thrown into the sea, it will happen. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive, if you have faith. And when he entered the temple, the chief priests and the elders of the people came up to him as he was teaching and said, By what authority are you doing these things? And who gave you this authority? And Jesus answered them, I will ask you one question, and if you tell me the answer, then I also will tell you by what authority I do these things. The baptism of John, from where did it come? From heaven or from man? And they discussed it among themselves, saying, If we say from heaven, he will say to us, Why then did you not believe him? But if we say from man, we are afraid of the crowd, for they hold that John was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, We do not know. And he said to them, Neither will I tell you by what authority I do these things. A few thoughts for today. In true fashion, this passage continues to challenge our lives each time we read it. This is more than just a tree that withers. If you dig deep, really deep, you may be forced to come face to face with a side of your spiritual life that may be rather uncomfortable. In a day and age when people throw around the word grace an awful lot, it is tough to ask the questions that need to be asked of ourselves. For truly, we ourselves are the only ones who can inquire of our state. What part did grace play in that tree's life? What part does grace play in the man with one talent who neglected to gain more for the master than what he was given? What part did grace play for the virgins who failed to make sure that they had enough oil for their lamps? How about those who we see naked, the hungry, the imprisoned, the poor, and we do nothing? Those are hard questions, to be sure. Yes, this is more than a story of a poor tree that yielded no fruit. For the discerning mind, this is a passage for everyone to read, to heed, and to hear the message delivered. If you are not bearing fruit in the kingdom, consider the response you will make to the Master when someday you will give account of what you have or have not used. When would you rather consider this? Now or on the threshold of eternity? Perhaps this was a harbinger for the Jews of Jesus' day. He came back to gather from his vineyard and found them wholly lacking. He says it will be more tolerable for Sodom and Gomorrah than for those who would hear the gospel message and reject it. How much more those who were entrusted with it and spurned their tasks? At one point in Jesus' ministry, many disciples chose to walk no more with him. How sad it must have been for him to watch as time and again those who stood with the door to salvation ajar before them, only to slam it closed, and with it, all hope. A question of the day. Have you thought of the talents you might have that are lying dormant? And finally, a thought to meditate on this day. Look around at your spiritual brothers and sisters and consider what could happen if we all used just one more talent than we are currently using. Those are our thoughts for today, February 6th.